Start the count. My wife's sending me funny text messages as I get on the air. All right, guys, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. Free agency starts tomorrow, but apparently things are going on early. This is officially the tampering period of free agency, where you're allowed to tamper or arrange deals, even though the year hasn't officially started. And I'd say there's been some movement, wouldn't you? I mean,
a little bit.
So I guess we should go ahead and start with the elephant in the room. Let's talk about Watson, Deshaun Watson. To me, talent-wise, it's a no-brainer. You want to go all in because of a player of that caliber to be available. I mean, that is you going from one Hall of Famer to another potential Hall of Famer if he is to continue production-wise on the pace he's on. I mean, this is a franchise quarterback. But then there's the reason why he's available. You know, you've got somebody who, even though the grand jury did no bill, still has 22 people accusing him of sexual harassment, sexual assault. There's a potential for civil suits, and there is a potential for a suspension. All that being said, the Saints apparently feel comfortable enough with him that they have pushed all their chips to the center and are going for this. Bob, just before we went on the air, you said what you thought or what you're hearing the Saints are offering. Go ahead and tell us what the Saints allegedly may be offering.
The only this is just rumor in the wind. No credible source that I'm allowed to mention. But supposedly one of the Saints offers has been 3 first-round picks, a third, and center Eric McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, you're trying to ship both of them.
You know what? Saints Twitter thinks that they could get away with shipping off
Ruiz,
shipping off Ruiz and or Pete, and that's going to be that. Someone's got to remind these people this isn't Madden. This isn't a video game. To get a player of Watson's caliber, you have to give up players of high caliber, draft picks of high caliber. There's just no ifs, ands, and buts about it. If you're the Saints, it's what if you're smart anyway. It's what are we willing to give up where we still feel we can be competitive by bringing in a franchise quarterback. Now, if that rumor is anywhere close to being true, about 3 firsts, a third, and Eric McCoy. I love McCoy, but I would take that deal any day of the week. Other names we've also heard, thrown about: Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, cornerback Paulson Adebo, and one of 2 pass rushers, either Marcus Davenport or Payton Turner. Davenport being the more unlikely of the 2 because he just restructured his deal earlier this morning. It was earlier this morning. So as we'll get into in a minute, any of the high tier Saints players that have recently restructured, folks, they're not going to be traded. They are just not. Because restructuring these deals, what that basically means, they're converting all or most of a cap hit into a cash bonus for said player. But if the team moves on from that player, all of a sudden that cash bonus that got taken off of the salary cap hit becomes dead cap money. So, for example, Ryan Ramczyk, if he gets traded, and I know he was one of the names thrown about, this is why it won't happen. Ryan Ramczyk gets traded, the Saints would have to eat $37 million of his salary.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to happen.
Davenport restructured today, did he not?
That is correct. Davenport restructured. Lattimore has restructured. Michael Thomas has restructured. Alvin Kamara has restructured. Cam Jordan has restructured yet again. No, and that basically means all of those players are now taken off of the trading block. Even if the Saints were willing to deal them at some point, they certainly wouldn't be now.
No, and that's what I basically said on Twitter as well, that all those restructured deals, if you try and trade them, that pushes all of that money they just restructured into this year's cap, because what they did was they gave them, like you said, Bob, they gave him a signing bonus and prorated that over the life of the contract. That's what happened with Jimmy Graham. That's what happened with Junior Gillette when we cut him. That's what happens when you restructure deals.
There's been twice that I didn't mind eating dead money. That was Junior Gillette and Brandon Browner.
Yeah.
I didn't mind chewing on that for as long as it took.
I'd throw the garbage heap that is Jarvis Byrd in there too. But by the time they were finally able to get rid of him, it wasn't nearly as big a cap hit as if it would have happened 2 years earlier when it should have, according to performance.
And that's why they hung on to him as long as they did, because they had to wait till you got to the point where you could dump him safely. 3 first rounders, Anna. And this is Twitter speculation. They all believe that Sean Payton, his compensation, because he's under a contract with us, that his compensation, if he were to go to Dallas, is to demand 2 first-round picks from Dallas. So Saints Twitter, doing the math, says, okay, if we send 3 of our first-round picks to Houston, then we could just reacquire those 2 first-round picks, basically, from Dallas when Dallas fires Mike McCarthy and wants to hire Sean Payton. It doesn't work that way, guys.
If Dallas fires Mike McCarthy, there is absolutely no hope for that organization, in my opinion.
The pressure is going to be for we're going to have a discussion one day about this when free agency kind of winds down. Absolute worst free agent signing in Saints history, because he's got some competition. Jason David, my personal favorite, the receiver who stole from Deuce McAllister. Oh, shoot, I just forgot his name. I was just thinking of his name, and I forgot it. Oh, gosh. It'll come to me in a second.
And there's always Kobe Fleener.
He came from Washington. I can see the name.
Connell?
Albert Connell. Thank you. Albert Connell. Yeah, he stole money from Deuce McAllister out of his wallet in the locker room. Then there's the guy, Andre Royal, who got into a shouting match with Mike Ditka, was the one that had the bag of coins for the infamous hazing incident where somebody got thrown through a plate glass window in lacrosse, and Albert Royal took a bag of coins and hit Cam Cleveland in the injured ankle when he had to run through the gauntlet, then used the coins to hit him in the eye and dislocate his eye from his socket. And it permanently affected his vision. That's why Cam Cleveland had such a short career. He had that great preseason, and you thought he was going to be another Wesley Walls, kind of a great pass catching tight end, and that whole thing was shot to hell. So, there's a lot of competition for the worst free agent signed in Saints history, and he never played it down because we cut him we traded him to the Indianapolis Colts. Or cut him, and he went to the Indianapolis Colts right after that. So,
and disappeared from all view.
Yeah, hang on here. That's my pizza. Let me grab this real quick. I'm sorry, I had to grab a Kleenex first because my nose started running. So, and I had no Kleenex here. So, hang on.
Well,
Bob, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
I've seen speculation that we might make an effort to try to bring in Jarvis Landry. What do you read of that?
I'm hearing that there is some mutual interest between Jarvis Landry and the New Orleans Saints. I'd worry about what the price tag is on Jarvis, as I would any free agent wide receiver, because we've already seen some absolutely ridiculous contracts given out to, and what my opinion is, mid-tier wide receivers.
We were talking about this last week, how Aaron Rodgers kind of set the market on quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, the move to Jacksonville by Christian Kirk did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like I've said with you guys over the last couple of weeks, this is one of the reasons why I would prefer that the Saints go after a high tier, a top tier tight end in free agency, and then address the receiver spot in the draft. Because and we've seen the numbers bear this out so far in the first couple of days of free agency. The top tier tight ends make about as much, give or take, as what the mid-level receivers are so far. So to me, it's smart finances. You see a whole lot more rookie receivers, even drafted after the first round, have initial success than you see rookie tight ends. And there are still plenty of tight ends on this free agent market that could come in and make a difference for the New Orleans Saints immediately.
Everybody seems to be franchise tagging the top tight ends this season.
That's not surprising at all.
O.J. Howard, Hayden Hurst, Gerald Everett, Robert Tonyan are the names that pop out to me that are still out there. There's a couple others too, but those are the top of my list.
I thought that the Bucks made a deal with Howard. I may be mistaken in that.
Not that I'm aware of. They have the Buccaneers have done a great job keeping a lot of their free agents, but O.J. Howard so far is not one of them.
No, they've got Cameron Brate, and now that he's come back, he's like a damn STD. He just doesn't go away. Doesn't matter how much damn penicillin you take. He just keeps coming back.
Tom Gonorrhea Brady.
Yeah. Well, the jokes have been so far, after Tom had to deal with Common Core math, he says, I'm going back to football. Dealing with his kids. His kids looking at this food he expected them to eat. Like, I want nuggets. I don't want TB12 to drink, anything like that. And he says, I'm out of here. So what happens in Tampa now with Gronk and people like that, they may try and come back. We don't know what Tampa's attitude is regarding how many of these free agents are going to bring back. Because remember, they brought back all 22 to make a Super Bowl run, and it didn't happen. So I would take O.J. Howard as well, just because I think having a fresh start kind of would help him. Yeah, you kind of figure out how to use him a little bit better than what they did over in Tampa.
Well, they were never going to play O.J. Howard over Cameron Brate
or Gronk, especially not Gronk.
And they weren't using him as a pass catching tight end. They would use him as an inline blocker who occasionally went out for routes. And I think O.J. Howard is more of a Jimmy Graham kind of tight end. I don't want to say this person's name, but that Jared guy that we had too, that you can line up outside the numbers as kind of a big receiver. I think that's kind of where he fits in a little bit better. So speaking of which, and again, this is, we kind of glossed over it, but we talked about it a little bit over the air before we got on the air, I should say. I like that the Saints are making a hard push for Deshaun Watson, given the movement of quarterbacks out there. My son and I sat around this weekend, and we actually looked at some film on these quarterbacks coming out of the draft.
Pretty bad, huh?
Yeah, I liked Frank Corral. I knew I'd do it. Matt Corral. I like Matt Corral the best.
So do I.
Only because the level of competition he played against, and
Yeah.
I think he's got the quickest release of all the quarterbacks.
Absolutely. And I like Carson Strong from Nevada quite a bit too.
I like him too. I just think he needs to. He's got a gun, and he doesn't know how to throw those soft passes.
Yeah.
He wants to rifle it in there. So if Kamara goes out on a wheel route right now, Carson Strong's going to try and drill him between the 4 and the 1, instead of just throwing a catchable ball. And I think that's where Corral stands out. Corral, that's his strength. Is he loves the shots over the middle between the hashes, and of course, in college football it's wider. And he really, I think, I like his mobility. I think he's too skinny, but I like his mobility. I think he gets in trouble once he rolls outside and he loses mechanics. He tries just to throw it with his arm. But man, because he runs that option format, when look at Calvin, I knew Calvin was going to rip into him. I'm not saying he is a guy ready to play. No, I'm just saying of the quarterbacks I watched, and I watched Carson Strong, I watched Kenny Pickett, I watched Malik Willis, and Matthew was more watching Sam Howell. I really didn't watch much of him. And Corral. I thought Corral, when he knew what he was doing, he knew the play, he recognized the coverage. It was great. He set up, planted that foot, and wham, that ball's out of his hands, and it's to a receiver. But that also means that the level of quarterback play you've got right now coming out of college football is just not very strong. Not this year. Not this year.
I don't see anybody in this quarterback class that you can look at and say, okay, now there is a franchise quarterback. No. I haven't seen anybody like that since the guy that went to Buffalo.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I underestimated Justin Herbert a lot. I thought coming out of Baylor and that system he played in Baylor, I'm like, he looks okay. I don't know if he's going to be, and I think a lot of people felt that way, so you really don't know until they get to the right kind of team. I thought Herbert went to the right team to make him a better passer.
Now, if he can just get with the right coach.
Well, that's my hope that Sean Payton, if he does come out of coaching, he goes to San Diego, Los Angeles Chargers.
And Herbert was lucky enough. You guys say right system, right coaches. Herbert has been lucky enough to have Joe Lombardi as an offensive coordinator. A Sean Payton oriented mind. We talk about Pete Carmichael. Growing up and studying under Sean Payton. I think Payton's influence has had an even greater effect on Joe Lombardi and his style of coaching than it has Pete Carmichael. But guys, having said that, and all three of us are obviously in agreement about this year's quarterback class, and there's still going to be 4 or 5 that get overdrafted in round 1. I think, and this is the point that you were driving at, Alan, and you were making before, Sean, if you have a chance to get a franchise quarterback like Deshaun Watson, you do what you can to bring that guy in. Now, the concern I have loved Deshaun Watson as a football player since his second to last year at Clemson. I don't deny his talent on the field, but the 3 of us are all fathers and all fathers of girls.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, you shouldn't even have to be a parent to be disgusted by the stories that have come out. But if you are, and you're a father of a girl, then you should be almost homicidal. I'm not going to pretend that I am the judge, jury, or executioner. I'm not going to pretend that I'm in a courtroom. I'm not a Twitter lawyer. But to me, 22 allegations, if it's one, a couple, a few, you might be able to chalk that up. Wrong place, wrong time, misunderstanding, maybe even conspiracy if you subject yourself to that. But 22 is more than enough to concern me as a fan, as someone who covers the team, and as someone who would be involved in the team, be it player, coach, general manager. I have little doubt that the Saints have done their due diligence. You're talking about one of the few teams in professional sports that have a woman owner, and a woman that's very active in the community at that. So I have little doubt that the Saints have done their due diligence. And I see, John Butler, you just made the point about Deshaun Watson's suspension. The NFL has been very tight-lipped about the possibility of this happening, which angers me because that in itself opens it up to conspiracy. So you're not only talking about the concern of Deshaun Watson, his accused behavior, and even more dangerously, is that behavior going to continue? But now you're also back on the football field. You're talking about, if you're the Saints or any team, what about the impending suspension that's going to come along with these civil suits? How big is it going? Is it going to happen at all? How big is it going to be? Is who he's going to go to affect the length of suspension?
Probably.
I believe that.
I was sitting here thinking that very thing. For example, he goes to New Orleans. Oh, you sitting down, brother.
Yeah.
Well, Ben Roethlisberger was accused of something similar.
Mm-hmm.
He was suspended 6 games.
Yeah, but his was only like one count, though.
Was it one? I don't remember how many counts it was.
I want to say it was one.
Bob saying it's 2, but
yeah, it was 2. It was actually 3 over a 4-year period of span. But when he got suspended, it was 2. 1 immediately, and then one a woman came out of the woodwork and said, yeah, he did this to me too. And they kind of went after him for that simultaneous.
And Jameis Winston was suspended, I think, 3 games for the Uber driver assault.
Yeah.
So, you kind of have a guide, 3 to 6 games. This is the complaint I've had forever about the CBA agreement, that the players allowed, because they didn't want to address the issue, the players allowed the commissioner to determine the punishment. You get caught gambling, suspension for at least a year. It's called an indefinite suspension, but they have a review after a year. Mm-hmm. You get caught with, anything that's considered a banned substance. First test, okay, we'll let you slide. Second test, now you got a suspension for so many games. Third test, this many games. Fourth test, you're suspended for a year. They put all that in the CBA. The players agreed to it. But when it comes to domestic abuse, when it comes to sexual assault, when it comes to a gun charge, there is nothing in the CBA the players have agreed to other than they say, here, Roger, you decide. Yeah. We don't want to have to tackle this issue.
And I don't understand that, because if you really think about it, the players have all the power in the world, because without the players, there's no game.
Right.
So I expect issues like that to change in the next collective bargaining.
But they're not willing to take it on. That's the thing. The player leadership,
like you said, Alan, that's been the problem. They don't want to address that issue publicly. So they just leave it in the less than capable hands of Ukrainian invader Roger Goodell.
I thought we were going back in time, because I had some good ones to get ready to go.
Lincoln conspirator.
I had some good ones all set up. Yeah, the Flying Dutchman I had in there. I had all kinds of them in there. Anyway, the sinker of the Spanish Armada, the Norman of the Norman invasion of 1066. I had it all. So you get a little history along with this show. So, and I agree with you, Bob. The sexual assault charges are hard enough to swallow. I am all for giving players a second chance. But 22 cases and a jury finding no bill, a grand jury finding no bill, and so they didn't issue an indictment. part of me thinks that, good God, this has to be the most incompetent district attorney I've ever seen. Probably
they've been a year.
Yeah, probably the most incompetent district attorney since, I don't know, the Baltimore district attorney, the district attorney that prosecuted OJ, the district attorney who prosecuted Casey Anthony. Just pick your case.
Jim Garrison.
Yeah, Jim Garrison. Jim Garrison used to have a key to the Saints facility. Did y'all know that?
No.
Yeah, that's just how the politics went. I mean, it would not be uncommon that a player would come in on Monday for treatment, and there's the district attorney of New Orleans sitting in the hot tub, the Whirlpool jets, because he had a bad back or whatever. And in JFK, the movie JFK, that is Jim Garrison who appears as Earl Warren. So so
he's cross-eyed as hell too.
Yeah, well, I think he was like 80-something years old at that time. So
I think he died a year or so after that movie was released.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was an excellent movie. I loved the movie, and the summation at the end by Costner.
Yeah.
It was. I don't even have the words. It was unbeatable. But as I did the research after I saw the movie and saw all the discrepancies as far as the facts, it was so founded in bullshit.
Yes, it was the problem with JFK, the movie, and I know we're going way off track. People here listening to us talk about Watson. Now we're talking about JFK. There is no Mr. X. Mr. X is basically Oliver Stone talking to you. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why the case really fell apart. The only thing that's really fascinating about that, because it took less than an hour for the jury to throw out Garrison's case. He was obsessed with the homosexual underworld at the time. So that was part of it. There was a lot of shady characters who didn't have very, they weren't even strong witnesses,
they weren't credible at all.
No, and then it was the conspiracy of the day. It was Cubans. No, it was people getting trained on the North Shore. No, it was this. It was
the mafia.
The mafia. It was everything. So there was no coherent thought behind any of the stuff that in the real version. But Oliver Stone constructs this entire scenario, and the only thing that was good was the Zapruder film, his breakdown of the Zapruder film, and why it couldn't be a soul gun.
As far as the CIA, and I could go, we, as always, we need another night for our off the rails version of Under the Dome.
Right.
when it comes to JFK and the CIA and mafia ties to the assassination, look up the name Fletcher Prouty. Prouty is the way it's spelled. Just fall into that rabbit hole, and it'll start to tie together some of that stuff. That's what I thought Oliver Stone did a pretty nice job of doing in the JFK version, in his version of the JFK movie. But yeah, look up Fletcher Prouty, and like I said, get back to me. Because I could go on and on and on about the Kennedy assassination, both Kennedy assassinations for that matter.
Well, maybe we should interview Roger Goodell. He was there.
Yeah.
He was on the grassy knoll. I know this.
I have been to that area in Dallas, and it's creepy because it's frozen in time. I mean, you come around that turn in the bookstore depository is a museum now. You come around that turn, that sign is still there. The fence is still there. The only thing that's not there anymore is the rail yard that used to be behind the fence where allegedly a shooter is. And, they got a whole display there, the grassy knoll people and everything else. But this is the last thing I'm going to say about JFK. I enjoy the movie from the New Orleans standpoint, seeing, recognizing where they are and what's going on, stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. He at least got that right. Most of the landmarks right, and realistic distances to stuff. Unlike the Big Easy or what was the other one? It was The one they said, you start going around Algiers asking questions and cut your tongue out and throw it in the river. We're like, really?
Denzel Washington.
Yeah. Like, really? I've
Where
been
they
in
blow
Algiers
up.
a lot.
They blow up the ferry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's like one scene they're at the lakefront. The next scene they drive and now they're walking through swampland. We're like, wait, what? How did you get there? Yeah, here we go. Breakfast cereals and top 10 lead guitarists all time. Oh, we could do that one for sure.
Oh, can I have just like 2 minutes to say something, please? I wanted to do this at the beginning.
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to mention this one.
I want to say thoughts and prayers go out to the family of probably, I mean, we talk about this on the show from time to time. Probably one of the most influential and most brilliant minds ever in professional wrestling passed away last night, Scott Hall. The wrestling product that you see on TV these days owes a huge debt of gratitude to guys like Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan. And I was fortunate enough in New Orleans to be in the audience when he was enshrined into the Hall of Fame. And the tribute that comes to mind is the last thing he said on stage that night. Tough times don't last, or bad times don't last, bad guys do.
Yeah. I don't, like I said, you got the wrong Ulrich when you're talking about wrestling. You got to get my brother on here. He knows. And I don't know who that guy is, Jake the Snake. But
well, see, a guy named Diamond Dallas Page, who is another professional wrestler. He
DDP. Anyway,
Diamond Dallas Page has gotten into this yoga thing. I mean, he has his own deal with that. And I think first it was Jake the Snake, and then it was Scott Hall. But that could be either way. He basically saved their lives because they were lost in addiction and in a terrible downward spiral.
Yeah.
And DDP got to him in time. But let this be a lesson. When you're young and you think you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof and you try to prove to the world that you are, it has a way of catching up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So my son's on now and he's going to bring up what I was going to go into next. So Teron Armstead has not signed. Now, Marcus Williams did sign with the Baltimore Ravens for $70 million over 5 years, something ridiculous like that. Which, some people are really saying, see, the cap is real. The Saints can't afford him. And it's like, no. The Saints decided, because they could have franchise tagged him if they wanted to hold on to him. They didn't. And the reason why they didn't is because they knew from last year's contracts that he wanted to get paid either just as much or more than what Jamal Adams is getting paid over there in Seattle. So their attitude is, we can find they're gonna basically Mark Ingram him, or if you want to, you go back in time a little bit, Carl Nix him and say, we're not going to pay this much for a safety. This is how much we're going to pay for a free safety. And they're going to find themselves a free safety. Now, again, going back to Deshaun Watson, the Saints are going all in, and it seems that Teron Armstead now is kind of holding off on some of these deals, depending on what the Saints do. My take on this is that Armstead's attitude is, if you do Watson, I'm going to stay, because you're not in a rebuild mode. You're in we're going to make a run mode, which I think what he wants to get to at this point. And my son used the wrong effect. It's effect, Matthew, not affect. EFFECT. That's all right. I used to hand out a sheet, and my wife still has it, of commonly misused words for writing. Anyway, that's one of the big ones. That one and dominant. You'd be surprised if people get dominate and dominant wrong.
Yes.
You just corrected your son on the air.
That's right. I gave. Hey, my son on a rival podcast, not a rival, just a different podcast, Saints Happy Hour podcast, the official trivia guy. Okay. Well, he gave a wrong answer to a trivia question.
Oh, man.
What Saints quarterback what quarterback for the Saints did the Saints give up multiple first rounds to acquire? And he said it was Steve Walsh, because that's what his answer was. It's like, no, Steve Walsh was a Lawrence Welk trade. They gave away a 1 and a 2 and a 3, So if you want to say anybody who got multiple first round picks, it would be Gary Quazzo. Because they gave away a first rounder to get him, which the Colts used to get Bubba Smith back in 1967. But in 1968, the Saints traded Quazzo to the Vikings and got a first back, which they used to draft Larry Hardy, and they had to turn around and give him back to the 49ers because they signed Dave Parks, who was not a free agent. They signed him out of his option year. So anyway, his assumption is if the Saints get Watson, then suddenly now Armstead wants to stay. And then it's very possible, because there's rumors that Watson's recruiting Fuller, and he's recruiting who was the other one I saw? Somebody else. But yeah, supposedly Landry comes, Honey Badger comes in. All these players going to play with Deshaun Watson. That's a lot of money. I don't know if you can do all that.
Well, first of all, Will Fuller would get a season-ending injury on his way into the room to sign a contract. Armstead, I think that there's something to that. I'm actually shocked. I'm not surprised that the Saints lost Marcus Williams. In fact, I expected it when they did not franchise tag him. But I thought Teron Armstead would be the first Saint to go to another team. And the fact that he has hung on, it does make me wonder that he's waiting to see, or if he's waiting to see what the Saints do at quarterback, and if he feels like the Saints could make a run, whether he would come back to New Orleans on, what they call a hometown discount. As far as Tyrann Mathieu, we talked about him last week. His fit with the Saints, and I think he would be a playmaker in this secondary. But if you think he is taking the Marcus Williams spot, you're sadly mistaken. You have to go back and watch film on the two players, because they are two different players with two completely different skill sets. Jarvis Landry is a decent fit, but I mean, we already mentioned it as far as the price of free agent wide receivers. I know that there's mutual interest between Landry and the Saints, but I do not think that Jarvis Landry is necessarily the answer to the wide receiver problem.
But I do believe that he knows his role, and he knows that, and both parties, as far as that goes, know that he's not coming in here to supplant Michael Thomas.
You're right.
Jarvis was a 2 or 3 in Cleveland, depending on who else was on the field at the time. And he knows that would be what he would be coming in here for.
I think if you get Watson and you give up as many draft picks as you give up, that with Landry, you kind of treat him as a 3, occasionally a 2, depending on the formation. But what you have is a fairly dependable receiver who can get you the first downs, a good route runner. So you're not relying on people like Callaway and Harty. I have to remember to say his new last name, Harty. But yeah, Armstead is very interesting, because I think Armstead would be willing to take less money if he's not part of a rebuild. I think he looks at his career at this point now. I'm 30. This is probably my last shot at a big contract. But do I really want to leave and go to another team and maybe unless I'm going to a team like the Bengals or the Rams or someone like that, I'm probably not guaranteed a postseason berth.
Mm-hmm.
And with Watson, he can look at his roster. He can look at the Saints roster honestly and say, with Watson, this team has a good shot of getting to the playoffs. Because they really were a quarterback away last year from getting back in the playoffs. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. My and Matt points out that Armstead had an interesting interview, but he wants to go to a winner, which I totally agree with.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about this, then we talked about some of the rookie quarterbacks. Let's talk about what if Watson doesn't choose the Saints. He goes to Carolina or he goes to San Francisco, which is one of the rumored locations. Where do the Saints go from here if that happens?
Well, and that's
you go to grab the fire extinguisher and try to put out the dumpster fire.
Kind of.
Because if you pursue Watson with vigor the way that reportedly the Saints are, that speaks volumes to Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
Well, no one's pursuing Jameis Winston. That also speaks volumes.
Yeah.
It kind of does. I still think that Jameis Winston can be a playoff quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. He's no Deshaun Watson, player to player. And we said this before we came on the air. All three of us were in agreement. If you're comparing player to player, there is no comparison. Deshaun Watson is heads and shoulders above Jameis Winston. But if you swing and a miss in your pursuit of Watson, in my opinion, the Saints are playing a very dangerous game of quarterback roulette right now. Where if the Deshaun Watson chamber misfires, what are your options? You could go after Jameis Winston. If it's not too late, because Indianapolis still needs a quarterback, Seattle still needs a quarterback, Houston presumably still needs a quarterback. Philadelphia, Carolina, they're both fishing for quarterbacks. So who's to say that Jameis Winston couldn't land in either one of those places? If those two things happen, then the Saints, in my opinion, are just about in panic mode. Now there's still Jimmy Garoppolo. If you could swing a trade for him, that's your fallback option, in my opinion. And Garoppolo, and for that matter, Jameis Winston too, could be a stopgap solution. For the real stopgap solutions, Mitchell Trubisky, Teddy Bridgewater, and Tyrod Taylor all signed contracts already. That leaves Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota, and Jacoby Brissett. Exactly. And then that basically means if you misfire on your Watson bullet and the Jameis Winston bullet gets spent because he signs with somewhere else, if you can't pull off I'm going to ignore that, John. If you cannot pull off a trade for, say, a Jimmy Garoppolo or, say, a Derek Carr, and I don't think he is, but say a Derek Carr was available and you can't swing a trade for him, then at this point, you're either bringing in a Mariota or a Dalton, or you're going back to Taysom Hill, and you're drafting it almost forces you to overdraft a quarterback in the first round. The same crew of quarterbacks that the three of us just said, in most years, none of these guys would even be first-round picks. So that's what I would call panic mode for the New Orleans Saints.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if you were going to add more to that, Sean, but my attitude is basically I think the Saints would then turn their sights towards Garoppolo. If they're willing to trade for Watson, they're probably willing to trade for Garoppolo, and they'll make a decision on that. And I think Dennis Allen is driving this. I think Dennis Allen has looked at, some Winston fans aren't going to like this, but I think they've looked at Winston and looked at the quarterbacks in the quarterback room right now. And they said, you know what? We really don't have a 16 or 17 game starter that we can win with. It may be not fair for Winston, but they may be looking at how he practiced. We don't see it. and looked at all these things and saying, you know, I want to go in a different direction. And I agree with you. I think if they can't pull off a trade for Winston and Watson, if they can't pull off a trade for Garoppolo, and they go back to a Winston, or they go to a Mariota, or they go to, you know, one of those other names, that quarterback is going to be drafted in the first round. That this guy, even with a Winston, this guy, they're looking at him as just this is a guy who's going to start for now, and we're going to start fresh with somebody else. That doesn't mean that Corral, Pickett, Willis, just, you know, Howell, you pick the quarterback. That doesn't mean they're the long-term answer either.
Mm-hmm.
But because it could be what we're seeing with Jordan Love in Green Bay. It could be what we're seeing with Trey Lance in San Francisco, where they've got to figure out, is this guy going to be worth it, or is this somebody going to trade?
From what I've seen of the quarterback class this year, at best, the very best one of them is still going to be a project.
Yes.
Sure. And I think they expect that. I just don't know if we have a coach on this roster. I would feel more confident taking a Matt Corral or one of those guys if Sean Payton was the head coach.
Oh, yeah, by far.
As opposed to Dennis Allen. But,
and that's nothing against Dennis Allen. It's just that he's a defensive guy, and Sean Payton was the quarterback whisperer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got a question for you guys. And you know, Jordy Haltberg and I were talking about this because he raised this question to me. You know, with Cleveland and Atlanta both in on the Watson sweepstakes, say one of those teams get Deshaun Watson. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden Baker Mayfield is available. Matt Ryan is available. Mm-hmm. Both of whom the price for would be significantly driven down, just as it would for Garoppolo if Watson ended up in San Francisco. If you're the Saints, do you make a move for Mayfield or Ryan if Deshaun Watson lands in either one of those places?
I would love to have Baker Mayfield.
I was going to say, if I'm making a move for somebody, I'm making a move for Baker Mayfield, only because you got the advantage of youth. And you got the advantage of a rookie contract. He's in the last year of the rookie contract, and you have to make a decision with that. But you've got a younger player, and you're going to think that, let's see if changing venues makes him a better quarterback than what he had to do with. I knew Calvin was going to say this, Baker. Hell no. But I mean,
excuse me, Alan.
Yeah.
Calvin, would you rather go all in on a Matt Ryan that is in the twilight of his career? You have him maybe 2, possibly even 3 seasons, and then you're right back where you are right now, having to look for somebody else? I mean, it's nothing against the talent with either guy. Baker has proven that he can win in an impossible situation perennially that has been the Cleveland Browns organization. Now, he had lots of toys to play with up there in that, and as he would have here. And I don't think that if I'm Deshaun Watson, there is absolutely no way that I have any interest whatsoever in going to the dumpster fire that is the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, and Matt, you know, all of these teams, New Orleans included, have made their presentations to Watson. It's literally recruiting. And, you know, one of the few things that Atlanta has going for them is that Watson grew up, played high school ball less than an hour from Atlanta. They do have that going for them. But as far as what you said, Sean, about Baker Mayfield, you could say the same thing about Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo and Mayfield are both entering the final year of their contracts. The Saints could theoretically bring either one of them in and not be handcuffed to them for the foreseeable future if it doesn't work out. A very similar scenario as what we were looking at with Jameis Winston exactly 1 year ago at this time. Now, you know, the reason the Winston experiment went sort of off the tracks was because Jameis got hurt. But essentially, it would be the same kind of scenario with either Garoppolo or Baker Mayfield if you had to swing a deal for either one of them.
I I would feel bad for Cam Jordan because now he can't tackle Matt Ryan anymore. If
They'd have to
Ryan's
make
now under
training
center.
camp sacks count.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just poor Cam. That was his ticket to surpass Ricky Jackson. Was gets to play Matt Ryan twice a year. He could get 8 sacks in those. Yeah, between those 2 games, absolutely. So yeah,
he almost got 8 in one game.
He can't leave. He's got to stay. But I think I find it very amusing too. That here we're talking about. We haven't even talked about Carolina yet, but Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans are all in for Watson, and a lot of the talk around it is, well, they're in to drive up the price for their rival, make them pay more, so if we're going to set somebody back, I find it funny only from the standpoint of the Falcons are jumping in this late. They just restructured Matt Ryan's contract today.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they really were afraid. They're reading the same things we're reading. The Saints or Carolina could have them. That means we have to deal with Watson in this division twice a year. This is not their plan. Their plan was a slow rebuild, and now they're going to have to go all in and sacrifice, high draft picks because this team, the Falcons, stink. I mean, there's just no getting around it. They're going to be picking in the top 10 a lot. Yeah. And even if they get Watson, who's he going to throw it to? You got a tight end, but their offensive line is crap. Their defense is garbage. And they're in the middle of a transition away from the small, fast guys that what's his name? The human thumb. What was his name? I forget. He's now the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. Quinn.
Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn likes. He likes small, fast guys, and they want to become more of a bigger physical team. You sacrifice all those draft picks. Watson's playing with crap for a long time.
Yep.
So, and you're still going to have dead money to deal with it, Ryan. So, yeah, I just can't see it. Baker Mayfield just said his goodbyes to Cleveland.
What?
I wonder if Progressive Insurance knows this.
Damn, he's going to have to start over with the commercials.
Yeah. Now he's going to be where? Yeah. But yeah,
there's been a rift for the longest time between Baker and that organization.
Yeah, John. He looks like a thumb. If you take your thumb and you draw like a goatee and dot eyes, because that bald head, he looks just like the thumb creatures. Y'all never did that as a kid. You draw a little face on your thumb. Yeah, that's what he looks like, the human thumb. If you look at a picture of Dan Quinn and you draw a face and goatee on your thumb, that's exactly what he looks like. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, God.
Yeah, Anna liked that one. Good.
And look, I mean, Kyler Murray also pulled down all of his Cardinals stuff from his Instagram and Twitter page. Take that for what it is. It means nothing at this point.
Well, Julio Jones did the same thing, and it was still another 3 or 4 years before he ever left Atlanta.
Right. That was just Julio not wanting, not admitting to the world that he was involved with the Atlanta Falcons. That was more shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Alan and Sean, you got great points. I mean, if you compare the rosters of the NFC, if you compare the rosters between, say, Carolina and Atlanta, Carolina has far more pieces on there that you could sit here and say, okay, I see at least see the direction that they're going. And they have 2 or 3 pieces on offense, and they have a handful of good defensive players that you would take on your team. Atlanta, who do they got? They got Jones at linebacker that I could think of, and like you said, Pitts at tight end. That's literally it. I would take Thomas Morstead on my roster because I like Thomas Morstead as a person. But as a player, you're just as good, if not better, at this stage with Blake Gillikin. We're going to find out what kind of player, what kind of competitor Deshaun Watson is throughout this whole situation.
Yeah, and the Falcons. I'm not sure if the Falcons lost another receiver today, but the Falcons.
Russell Gage signed with Tampa Bay, not to interrupt.
Also, Russell Gage did leave. Okay, so that's even less. But to me, the biggest problem with the Falcons is that picket fence they call an offensive line.
Yep.
I mean, they've invested all these picks, and you can blame Matt Ryan for all you want. The very fact is that offensive line is a turnstile. And I think Winston can look at that offensive line and go, no thanks. I mean, I don't want to be running for my life. I already had to deal with that crap here in Texas. I don't need to have that again. So there's a lot of factors that come into play here. That would be interesting. A lot of headlines have Mayfield getting traded to the Colts with or without the Watson deal.
That's certainly possible.
Because that means the Browns, and I don't know what the hell is going on. The stress must be getting bad at me at work. I had dreams last night about being around the Cleveland Browns, and I don't know why. Paul Brown was there. I don't know, and I wasn't watching any old Browns footage. I really wasn't. Just that kind of stuff was in my head. I don't know why, but anyway.
Eating pizza late at night.
No, that's what it's going to be. But but yeah, that says a lot about the Browns. They're willing to trade within the division, because I think that's the other thing that works against Watson going to the Browns is that Houston can say, we're going to, you can waive your no trade clause and pick your teams. We don't want to trade within the AFC. We want you to go to the NFC, where we only have to see you once every 4 years, and the only way we're going to face you in the postseason is if both of us are in the Super Bowl. Whereas if they're trying to build something and Watson does what we expect, if he's in Cleveland, they already shot down Indianapolis. They're not going to. They weren't going to trade in the division. Yep. But if he goes to Cleveland and the Texans actually do something with all these picks they get, they can very well face Watson in the playoffs every year. So yeah, that's the negative about that. I've heard that Baker runs off his receivers. Michael Thomas wouldn't click too well with Baker.
Never underestimate Baker Mayfield. When he was coming out of college, everybody wanted to call him the next Johnny Manziel, and I hated that. And not just because he was from Oklahoma. Baker is, to be honest, he's got his flaws, both on the field and off. But you're talking about a guy that in the span of 5 years went from walking on to not one, but two major universities, going from walk-on to starter. And in the span of 3 years, went from walk-on to Heisman Trophy winner. You don't accomplish those kind of things without being willing to work for it.
I think the problem in Cleveland is a lack of leadership in that locker room.
Absolutely.
And I think he wouldn't have that problem in New Orleans.
You had all of those young players coming in at the same time, and nobody stepped up to embrace the leadership role.
Well, you put a lot of volatile personalities in that same room together too.
Yeah.
With OBJ and players like that. You need to have strong veteran leadership to kind of get people under control. And you have to have a strong head coach. I don't know how strong Dennis Allen is, but I think he's stronger than any of the coaches they've had at Cleveland.
But by the same token, in the New Orleans locker room, you've got players like Cam Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
You've got players like DeMario Davis, people that you can trust to keep that team running on all cylinders. Yeah, Malcolm Jenkins as well.
Yeah.
You've got these guys that you can depend on to be the intermediary.
He's got Mayfield's face on one cheek.
Okay, well.
Cheek. Oh, here it goes. Here we go. Goodbye, family hour. Yeah. he's got OU on one side, Mayfield's face on the other side.
That's right.
Yeah. So, all right. Here we
At least I don't have a tattoo of Roy Orbison on my ass.
Yeah.
Well, no, not that he would see it. All right. So, the last things we haven't talked about much. I think we've hit almost everything. The last thing that happened while we were on the air is one of the players that we thought was going to possibly be involved in any kind of trade, Bradley Roby, has renegotiated his contract. Now, it's interesting for me in two ways. Number one, that means the Saints are going to keep him. But number two, part of this trade for Watson that has been talked about is they want the Texans want to get somebody under a rookie contract that's inexpensive and has a few years left. So that kind of wiped out like a Davenport who's playing in his last year. That's why I'm seeing names like Nick Underhill saying Ruiz is a possibility. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was a possibility. And so is now Paulson Adebo.
Mm-hmm. Payton Turner, too.
Payton Turner's another one, yes. That you could offload any of those guys. Hey, let's just throw Chartman in there too. You get, buy one, get one free. We'll give you, in fact, we'll give you the entire 2019 draft. We'll give you Ruiz, we'll give you Trotman, and we'll give you Zach Bond. You can have them all. And your 3 first-round picks.
Yeah,
right. You'll take a whole draft class. But I think it's funny, that these guys are being mentioned. And as much as I love Adebo, I would rather lose Adebo than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, just from the personality standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But he would be a loss. Bradley Roby is not as good as Adebo, but Bradley Roby could carry you over for a little while.
Yeah.
So. Well, you look at it this way. The Saints traded for Bradley Roby last year when they did, because they expected him to start while Adebo developed. So that's how highly they felt about Bradley Roby. Meanwhile, you look at Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and look, I know he's a favorite of Saints fans, and I get why. I love him too. You just lost Marcus Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm Jenkins, if he isn't a cap cut, he is on the last stages of his career, and PJ Williams is still unsigned. Mm-hmm. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is the only skilled in his prime safety you have on the roster.
Yeah.
And more than that, he's a guy that could play strong safety, deep safety, in the box, or slot. So he's one of the league's most versatile defensive back. So I agree with you. I love Paulson Adebo, but I think it's most likely that he would be included in a trade. If the Saints were making the call, he would be included in trade before Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
And the other thing I would do too, if I'm the Saints, before I give up just 3 first-rounders off the bat, because of the possible suspension, I'm going to say, you know what? You can have my 2022 first-round pick, but my first-round pick in 2023, I'm going to make it a conditional pick. It'll be a third that can convert to a first based off of if Watson in 2022 takes 90% of the snaps, if he throws for, let's just say 4,500 yards. He ends up throwing for 5,000, but 4,500 is pretty realistic, I think, in this offense, if you're able to get some good receivers. We get to the postseason, we get to the end of the championship game, that kind of stuff. Because then you're saying, okay, I'm elevating this to a first-round pick. So just like we did Ricky Williams with Miami, if he got 1,500 yards, that was elevated to a first-round pick. Or Ricky Williams got 1,800 yards. I think he led the league in rushing that year. So I think you could kind of work that kind of deal out, and you're basically telling Watson, you know what? here's an incentive. You can do these things. We believe you can do these things. We will surround you with the pieces to do it. And the Texans are like, hell yeah, the more success the Saints have, the higher that pick goes up. They become Saints fans by default.
Yeah.
So,
and if you're looking at it from a Saints perspective too, be it the front office or just as a regular fan, if you get Deshaun Watson in here, your goal, your expectation is to be at the top of the contender heat every year, just as they were the previous 5 years. So those first round picks are in the range of 28, 30, 31, 32 if you win the Super Bowl. So I think that's a small price to surrender for a player of the caliber of Deshaun Watson, as long as he and your team plays up to the expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I completely agree.
The final thing, and this is the one part we didn't talk much about, is his contract, only because I don't fear the Saints' ability to work out a contract that they can keep them under the cap. I mean, it's a lot of big numbers. He signed a $200 million deal, something to that equivalent, like 2 years ago, which is one of the reasons why the Texans didn't cut him outright in 2020. But so he's got like $37 million cap hits and $25 million cap hits each year. I think they can structure a deal or restructure his deal so he gets more cash up front, and they can lower his cap hit. That way they can afford to bring in other players. While they're not going to be shooting for top targets, especially in the receiving core, you can probably get a top tight end like we talked about at the beginning of the show. And then with your picks you got, the Saints got 2 compensatory third-round picks. With those because one of them is for Trey Hendrickson. These were both expected. Trey Hendrickson, and then for Terry Fontenot going to Atlanta, they get a third-round pick under the minority hiring thing. And that's one of the reasons why you're seeing Hartley's name so much too, is the Saints are pushing him to become a general manager somewhere in the NFL. And once again, they'll get a compensatory pick, so it's to their benefit. But you see him getting a lot of attention now, more so than Loomis for being the contract wizard guy. But yeah, I think those factors. I think you're right, Calvin. I think it's 98 and 101. I don't have the exact count. It's at the end of the
Yeah,
it's always at the end of the third round, your compensatory round. But knowing you have those picks and you're not going to trade them, there's your opportunity to go get another cornerback, a receiver. That's where you can, if you sacrifice your first and second round picks to get Watson. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's some maneuvering they can do to get some of these players. But yeah, the cost is significant. Cost really is. And Calvin's joining in again. If we get Watson, I guarantee one of those picks will be 31, 32.
I mean, if they make the deal for Watson, that is what their expectation is. So yeah,
absolutely. I think it's at least no less than 27 and 28. Only because I think the talent around them is good enough. You just really need to get that second running back, a young power back, and get some kind of speed receiver somewhere. Somehow get somebody who can run and has hands. Because I think the offensive line problems can be worked out. I think if Armstead comes back, that's huge. And I think the defensive line or defensive system that Allen is running and the players he's got, he can still play that defense can still play at an elite level. The door is not closed on them. This is not the Dome Patrol circa 91, 92. This is closer to the Dome Patrol 88, 89, and 90. They still have a few years left.
Yeah. In my opinion, you have a very real need. You have to address that safety. They really need to plug in another defensive tackle, and linebacking depth worries me a little bit if Quan isn't re-signed. But outside of that, you look at this starting defensive unit, and I fully agree with you. You could stack them up against any defense in the NFL, and you probably end up taking the New Orleans Saints out of it. Let me ask you, because I know we're wrapping up here in a minute. I think all three of us gave our opinion on a potential Watson deal. Now let's get your prediction. Do you think it'll happen? And if so, what will be the compensation?
Oh, God. Predictions are not my strong suit.
I know. It's been a while since we've done this, though. So we can revisit and poke fun at ourselves a week from today.
Absolutely. I think, obviously, it's going to depend on the package that's put together to compensate them for Watson. I think of the four teams that are being bantered about in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, I would say that the Saints are probably the strongest organizationally, structure-wise, and the only detraction from that's detraction, not distraction, Alan. The only detraction from that is you got a first-year head coach, and you're going from an offensive-minded coach to a defensive-minded coach, if that would be a concern at all to him.
So are you saying they're going to take him or not?
Well, I was trying not to. There's so many variables, man.
Oh yeah.
I'll say yes.
Okay. So Anna's saying, well, first John Butler said, is there any concern? Do any of y'all have a concern that Watson's been out for a year and a half, that he is not as sharp as he was?
I liken that to not career-ending, to a season-ending injury of some sort. Look at the beginning, since the beginning of the 2020 season. There's been 33 regular season games. Deshaun Watson has played in 16 of those 33 games. Jameis Winston has played in 8 of those 33 regular season games.
Yeah,
that's what I'll compare it to. So no, I'm not concerned about the you are concerned a little bit about the layoff, obviously, with anybody, just like they would be coming back from a season-ending injury. You're also concerned about Watson's fit into a new offensive system, how the system would curtail itself to his abilities and vice versa. But again, he is one of those plug-and-play players that you put in any offense, and it instantly makes the whole unit better.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with you.
So my answer, first I'll answer Anna's question. I think it's in our best short-term interest to pursue Watson, with the idea he's your long-term solution at quarterback. He's 27 years old. You're looking at least 10 years that he could probably play at a high level, given today's rules. You asked me 10 years ago, I probably said no. He probably 35 is probably his max. So you're looking 6 to 8 years at an elite level. But I think he can play 10 years at an elite level. So it's in our short-term best interest. I think the only way you can judge this, if this trade happens and it's a success, is A, what do the Saints do now that they have Watson? We're holding up a Lombardi trophy in the next 3 years. And we've been in the NFC Championship game 2 of those 3 years. I think you can say we won the trade. Because regardless of what the Texans do, if the Texans are able to build a good team with those picks, people are always going to play the what-if game. I think that the Saints do pull this trade off. I think they put something together that will be acceptable to the Texans, and I think they made a good presentation to Watson for all the reasons we talked about. Strong defense, you play a weak division, you play in a dome for 8 games. 10 if you count the 2 Falcon games in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. You play in warm weather climate for all the all the games in the division. You don't have to go deal with snow or anything like that. So yeah, I think, and this is a winnable division. This defense can shut down Tom Brady. It's done it. Um, so you're looking at a team that has won 4 straight division titles, even without Sean Payton. You're looking at it's the same owner, same general manager, same scouts, pretty much the same coaching staff. There's some minor changes, but pretty much the same coaching staff. So you've seen a stability he never saw over in Houston.
Right. Pretty much the same roster too.
Yes. And I'm sorry, those players look around, and you know how everybody imitates the Saints when they pick off a pass and they all got to do the group photo now. Well, guess what? What have we noticed now with the locker room celebrations? You see teams now starting to do the locker room celebration. I guarantee you, Deshaun Watson has seen the TikTok videos and the Instagram videos of doing, Teddy Bridgewater and Jameis Winston doing a chopper thing in there, and it's a dance club, and they see all that, and they show these guys in the Superdome, and they're playing great music, and the players are dancing on the sideline. Hell yeah, they're like, that looks like a fun team to play for. These guys have fun, so I think that kind of stuff works. I think the compensation is going to be the hard part. It's going to be really hard to swallow. I'm not, I don't know if it's going to be 3 firsts, 2 seconds, and probably, I wouldn't say Werner. I would probably say Adebo would be one of them. I don't know where the other one comes from. Maybe McCoy. Ruiz, as much as we make fun of him, he's a rookie. Not a rookie. He's on a rookie contract. They may take him thinking they can do something with him, and we just don't know what the hell we're doing. I don't know. That would be such a Houston thing to do. And I think Saints fans would be dancing in the friggin' streets if they took Ruiz. Turner is a possibility. He played at University of Houston. I wouldn't be surprised they dangled him out to them as well. UH guy. So it's all a possibility. I think if there's a sticking point, I think the sticking point will be whether or not they accept what the Saints offer, which I think might be a little less than what a team like Atlanta or Carolina can offer. Bob, how about you? I know I was kind of a long-winded answer, but
I know it's okay. I mean, it's a long-winded conversation because there are so many variables. Like I said, I love Watson as a player, but the allegations he's accused of absolutely disgust me. I hope to God that look, as a person, as a father, if even a fraction of this is true, I hope he's in prison for the rest of his life. That's just my personal feeling on it. I hope it's just a whole bunch of misunderstandings. I realize that's very naive of me to say. But as far as my prediction, I've come around in the last 24, 36 hours. I now think that this will happen.
Me too.
I realize Houston's been asking for 3 first-round draft picks since Watson went on the trade market last year. That's not my issue. The 3 first-round draft picks are not my issue. Because, again, if this trade works out the way the Saints expect it to work out, you're talking about all picks at the back half of the first round, or the back portion, rather. The bigger sticking point with me is what other kind of compensation are they going to have to give up? Is it a couple of second-round picks? Yeah, I'd start to have a problem with that. First and second rounds and back-to-back-to-back seasons. But this is the way I think it's going to go down. I think Houston will get their 3 first-round picks from New Orleans. I think a 1 second or third round pick will be involved either next year or the year after. And I think that there'll be 2 players. I believe one of them will be Eric McCoy. That's just a gut feeling. And then the other will be, don't be surprised if a guy like David Onyemata is thrown in. I would hate to lose Onyemata, but he's on a very reasonable deal. He's a star defensive player, still in the early part of his prime, that you could build a defensive line around. I think more realistically, the Saints will probably, if you're talking negotiation, they probably offered maybe a Bradley Roby initially, or maybe a Payton Turner. And there's always counter offers to these things if there's mutual interest. And that's why I think I think another player that'll be involved will be David Onyemata, a bona fide star with a reasonable contract, that Houston can build around, and probably also a Payton Turner or a Paulson Adebo. But yeah, I think that's the compensation. I'll predict Watson does get traded. It'll be 3 first rounders, 1/3, McCoy, Onyemata, and Paulson Adebo.
Do you think that the Saints will get any picks or players that Houston just wants to dump with this kind of trade, like a Brandon Cooks or maybe a 4th round pick or something like that?
I see it being more likely a draft pick, early day 3 draft pick. Cooks, depending on where he's at in his contract, which I don't have off the top of my head. Cooks, I wouldn't mind for a year or 2 in this offense, but I see it being more like a 4th or a 5th round draft choice, because New Orleans knows and has shown in the past they could take a couple of those day 3 picks, package them, and move them up into a late day 2 selection. New Orleans has become masters at that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm the same way. When this first started, as soon as that, he was cleared by the grand jury. Now he's not clear of the charges or everything. There's still the criminal portion of it is over with. You start seeing all these names come out. And I was just like, yeah, the Saints really don't have anything to trade. It's probably not going to happen. He'll end up in Philadelphia. He'll end up in some of those other places. And then they start whittling it down. And yesterday it's either Carolina or New Orleans. When it got to that point, I'm like, if I'm weighing those 2 options, and I'm not being biased, if I'm weighing those 2 options, I'm leaning towards New Orleans. Only because, Carolina's probably going to give me more valuable draft picks, but Watson as a player is looking at us like going, I'm going to get my ass kicked behind this offensive line. It's terrible. And they're probably they don't have a running back because they're going to probably get rid of run CMC. So I got a couple of receivers to throw to, but that coach is going to get fired. And I might be in a situation worse than I was with, over there in Houston with Bill O'Brien. So,
no. There is no situation worse than being in Houston with Bill O'Brien.
Well, the funny thing, Saints just signed Marcus May.
Did they really? That's huge.
Yes, my son just texted me this. Marcus May, the free safety from the Jets. That was a name I was told early in the free agency thing. If Marcus Williams went somewhere else, Marcus May, the safety from the Jets who tore his Achilles last year, and he better be with whatever voodoo doctor worked with Quan Alexander to get that Achilles right. Man, I'm telling you, I don't know whose soul, what child he ate, or whatever he did to get a better Achilles than what he had before he tore it. But
in 9 months.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Quan Alexander better just take Marcus May and say, dude, do what I did. Because
get in the boat. We're going out in the bayou.
Yeah, we're gonna put your foot in this swamp. We're gonna you're gonna sit your foot by Marie Laveau, the whole bit,
Yeah.
Because that was incredible. So yeah, Marcus May is gonna be the safety. So that actually kind of takes care of. He's not as good as Williams, but he's young. He's got an upside. That is a huge deal. So yeah. Quan worked with AK's trainer. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. But yeah, I'm telling you. Yes, Cooks was pissed off that he did not get traded with Ingram. So who knows? But yeah, Marcus May is now a Saint. So that's actually pretty huge. So anyway, but yeah,
Breaking news.
I'm telling you, this shit's going fast and furious. Unless I live on Twitter, and I've been on Twitter enough these past few days.
I get updates from Yahoo Sports and the NFL Network.
Hopefully, Saints News Network too, Sean. I mean, give me a little bit of a plug here.
Yeah, I get those too.
Yeah, I've been arguing with idiots about the cap, the salary cap, how the Saints do it.
Once again, for somebody to say we can't pursue that player because of the salary cap, they know absolutely nothing about the way that the New Orleans Saints work. That has never affected their pursuit of a player that they were interested in. Mickey Loomis deals with it.
Well, here's a funny thing, and I did see this in the news. Yeah, I think it does. There goes the Honey Badger talk. I think the Honey Badger stuff was more LSU fan driven anyway. I think the Saints were interested, but in all honesty, the Honey Badger plays best where Chauncey Gardner-Johnson plays. As that roaming free safety, not as a single high safety back there. The Saints signed him for 3 years. Oh, I wish. It's $28.5 million. It should have been $28.3 million. It really should have. I know it's the Jets, but still $28.3 million.
If we go back to our hypotheticals and we were talking about, could the Saints make a run for Matt Ryan if Deshaun Watson ends up in Atlanta? That's what the Saints' first contract offer should be, $28.3 million.
True story. I kid you not. You all know the famous Miracle in the Meadowlands play, where all Joe Pisarcik had to do was fall on the ball, and he
Edwards.
He tries to hand off to Larry Zonka, no less, and he fumbles it, and Herm Edwards picks it up. Well, Joe Pisarcik ended up because they drafted in 1979 they drafted Phil Simms, and Pisarcik in 1980 ended up on that Eagles team that went to the Super Bowl. Well, Herm Edwards every day in the locker room would walk by or have a player walk by Pisarcik's locker, drop a football, and Edwards would run across the locker room, scoop it up, and run to the other side of the locker room and act like he scored. And they would do it all the time. And he said, "Joe, look familiar?"
Wow.
So true story. So that's the kind of stuff that goes on in locker rooms. But yeah. 22 Rabid Wolverine. That reminds, speaking of the Eagles, that reminds me that wasn't that what you call its old nickname? What was his name? The safety for the Eagles. He really good player. Probably a Hall of Fame borderline safety. Hang on.
You talking Brian Dawkins?
Brian Dawkins, yes. That was his nickname, Wolverine, I think.
Was it? That'd be a good one if so.
Yeah. I had Lito Shepherd in my head because every time that I have a friend who's an Eagles fan, and he told me this story too. Every time Lito Shepherd made a play, picked off a pass, the crowd would sing Lito Shuffle. Yes, by Boss Skaggs. You'd hear the crowd chant that song. So that's actually kind of funny. Yeah. So anyway, I see
Bob's gone X-Files.
Bob's going total X-Files with Smokey Man. So that tells me it's yes, thank you, Dawkins. Bob's gone totally X-Files out in the cold of Pennsylvania is a Smokey Man. So that tells us it's time for us to go. It's 1:30 and 1 hour and 30 minutes, typical show for us.
Yeah. But we're entertaining though.
Hey,
you get knowledge, you get education,
get breaking news, you get conspiracy theories, you get you learn about the JFK history lessons, Roger Goodell,
and not necessarily tonight, but you also get music theory and
Roger Goodell was the one that was throwing Christians to their deaths in the Roman Colosseum. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You learn all kinds of things. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. Hey, you guys even got breaking news. We learned Bradley Roby's renegotiated his deal. By the way, when they we didn't say this, but when they renegotiated, restructured, I should say, Davenport's deal, that got them under the cap. So the Saints are under the cap. You have to be under the cap. You have to have enough money set aside to draft players, and they have apparently restructured enough deals that they can start signing players. So that's even better. You get Marcus Maynoo's. So, man, this stuff is coming fast and furious. For all you fans who got frustrated all these years that, hey, the Saints just sit there and let all these players get picked off before they do anything, are you not entertained? Are you not seeing what it's like to be an aggressive team? This is probably about as aggressive as the Saints have been since, going back to 2000 and 2006, as far as coming out trying to make a name for themselves.
And to the Saints fans that get hung up on these players that they've become attached to over the years, in regards to this Watson deal, you have to bear in mind one simple fact. To get a great player, you're going to have to pay for it.
Yep. Always.
To be the man, you got to beat the man. I was waiting for that one. To be the man, you got to beat the man. On that note, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.